In the heart of Hillsborough County, Florida, a story unfolded that shocked a nation. Beneath the sunlit skies of the Sunshine State, the chilling narrative of Doris Dunnigan Moore, a manipulative and deceitful woman, emerged a story of unrelenting greed that ended with a senseless and brutal murder. This is the tale of the Lotto Killer, a woman whose calculated schemes led to the tragic demise of Abraham Shakespeare, a man who had hoped his lottery winnings would bring joy, but instead, they brought his untimely death. The story begins in 2006, when Abraham Shakespeare, a truck driver from Frostproof, Florida, made a life-changing decision. On a whim, he purchased a lottery ticket, spending a few dollars on what seemed like a fleeting fantasy. But against all odds, Shakespeare's ticket turned out to be a winner $30 million, an amount that could elevate anyone from obscurity to a life of unimaginable comfort. At first, Shakespeare lived the dream. After opting for a lump sum payout, he received $17 million. His life changed overnight. The quiet, unassuming man, who had spent most of his days working hard to make ends meet, now found himself thrust into the limelight. But Shakespeare's newfound wealth also became a magnet for trouble. Friends, family, and strangers flocked to him, seeking loans, gifts, and handouts. The man with a generous heart found himself overwhelmed by the constant demands. While he gave freely, paying off debts and buying homes for loved ones, he soon discovered that his generosity came at a steep price. His fortune dwindled rapidly, and the pressures of sudden wealth began to take a toll. Entered Doris Dunnigan Moore. Known as DD to her acquaintances, Moore presented herself as a successful businesswoman and a financial savior. She claimed to have years of experience managing money and promised to help Shakespeare protect what remained of his dwindling fortune. Moore was charming, persuasive, and appeared to have Shakespeare's best interests at heart. In reality, she was a predator who saw him as nothing more than an opportunity to enrich herself. By 2008, Moore had worked her way into Shakespeare's inner circle. She convinced him to transfer his remaining assets to a limited liability company she controlled, assuring him it was a necessary move to protect him from the vultures circling his fortune. What Shakespeare didn't realize was that he had placed his trust in the very person who would destroy him. Moore wasted no time siphoning money from his accounts, purchasing luxury cars, high-end vacations, and expensive properties, all while Shakespeare's bank balance dwindled to nothing. By early 2009, Shakespeare began to express his frustrations. He confided in friends that he regretted ever winning the lottery and wished for a simpler life. His desire to escape the chaos provided Moore with the perfect pretext for her next move. In April 2009, Abraham Shakespeare disappeared. At first, Moore told those close to him that he had decided to leave town, tired of the constant harassment and financial pressures. She claimed he wanted to start fresh, free from the demands of those who sought his money. But Moore's story didn't add up. She told Shakespeare's mother, Elizabeth Walker, that he had gone overseas. To his friends, she said he was living quietly in another state. Despite her claims, Shakespeare's loved ones grew increasingly suspicious. He had always been a man of deep connections, particularly with his family, and the sudden silence was out of character. Moore worked tirelessly to maintain the illusion that Shakespeare was alive and well. She hired someone to send text messages from his phone, posing as Shakespeare to reassure friends and family. She even went so far as to pay one of Shakespeare's acquaintances $5,000 to create a video stating he had seen Shakespeare alive. But her web of lies began to unravel. Shakespeare's mother, skeptical of Moore's ever-changing stories, pressed the police to investigate. In late 2009, law enforcement turned their attention to Moore. Detectives quickly uncovered a trail of inconsistencies and suspicious behavior. Financial records revealed that Moore had drained Shakespeare's accounts and used the money to fund her lavish lifestyle. When questioned, her explanations grew increasingly implausible. The final break in the case came when one of Moore's associates, under police pressure, confessed to helping her move a large concrete slab at a home she owned in Plant City, Florida. The confession led authorities to the chilling discovery of Abraham Shakespeare's body, buried in a shallow grave beneath the slab. An autopsy revealed that Shakespeare had been shot twice in the chest. Investigators pieced together the timeline of events, concluding that Moore had killed Shakespeare in April 2009, shortly before his disappearance. The motive was clear greed. Moore had eliminated the one person who could expose her theft and threaten her newfound wealth. After murdering Shakespeare, Moore went to extraordinary lengths to cover her tracks. She buried his body, orchestrated a fake narrative of his departure, and manipulated those around her to keep the truth hidden. Her cold and calculated actions demonstrated a chilling lack of remorse, driven entirely by her desire to maintain control over the stolen money. In December 2012, Doris Dunnigan Moore stood trial for the murder of Abraham Shakespeare. The case captivated the nation, as the details of her deception and betrayal were laid bare in court. The prosecution painted Moore as a manipulative and greedy predator who had exploited Shakespeare's kindness and trust for her own gain. Witnesses testified about her lies, her efforts to conceal the murder, and her extravagant spending spree following Shakespeare's death. Perhaps the most damning evidence came from an undercover detective who had posed as a potential accomplice. Moore had tried to persuade the detective to take the blame for Shakespeare's murder, offering him money and even providing a map to the burial site. The jury deliberated for only a few hours before delivering their verdict guilty. Moore was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that she would spend the rest of her days behind bars. For those who knew Abraham Shakespeare, the trial brought a bittersweet sense of justice. While Moore had been held accountable, the loss of Shakespeare, a man whose only crime was trusting the wrong person, remained a painful reminder of the darkness greed can bring. Shakespeare's story became a cautionary tale, a tragic example of how sudden wealth can attract predators and how the pursuit of money can lead to unimaginable cruelty. Doris Dunnigan Moore's name is now etched in infamy, a symbol of betrayal and the devastating consequences of unchecked greed. Even after Moore's conviction, the scars left behind by her crimes ran deep in the communities touched by Abraham Shakespeare's life and death. For the residents of Frostproof and Hillsborough County, his story became a haunting reminder of how wealth, rather than bringing joy and opportunity, can sometimes lead to unimaginable tragedy. Shakespeare had been more than just a lottery winner. He was a friend, a son, and a neighbor who had once lived humbly and generously. His kindness, however, made him an easy target for exploitation. After his death, conversations about financial literacy, the dangers of sudden wealth, and the importance of legal protections for lottery winners grew louder. Advocacy groups called for reform, urging states to provide better resources for individuals who suddenly find themselves wealthy. The trial of Doris Moore became a media sensation, with outlets across the nation dissecting her motives, her manipulations, and the shocking details of her crime. The chilling contrast between her polished exterior, a woman who presented herself as a successful entrepreneur, and the cold-blooded killer she proved to be, captivated the public. Documentaries and true crime shows delved into the case, exploring the psychology of a woman who could commit such heinous acts with such a lack of remorse. Some speculated that Moore's actions were rooted in deeper sociopathic tendencies, pointing to her relentless pursuit of wealth and power at any cost. For Shakespeare's family, the loss was more than just the death of a loved one. It was the shattering of a dream that had promised so much but delivered only heartache. His mother, Elizabeth Walker, became a vocal advocate for ensuring that lottery winners receive better guidance and protection. Elizabeth spoke often of her son's humble beginnings and his deep desire to help those around him. Abraham didn't deserve what happened to him, she said in interviews, her voice trembling with grief. He just wanted to do good, and that's what made him a target. Shakespeare's friends shared similar sentiments, recounting the ways he had tried to bring happiness to others, only to find himself ensnared in a web of lies and deceit. While Shakespeare's loved ones mourned and the public condemned Moore's actions, she remained defiant. In prison, Moore maintained her innocence, giving interviews in which she claimed to have been framed. She insisted that she had tried to help Shakespeare, not harm him, and that his death was the result of a conspiracy. Her words, however, rang hollow in the face of overwhelming evidence. From the financial records that detailed her theft to the testimony of those she had tried to bribe or manipulate, the truth was clear. Moore's refusal to take responsibility only deepened the public's disdain for her. Life behind bars offered Moore no reprieve from her infamy. Other inmates, aware of her crimes, reportedly shunned her, and her attempts to paint herself as a victim fell flat. The tragedy of Abraham Shakespeare's death sparked conversations about the dark side of sudden wealth. Despite the warnings his story provided, other lottery winners in subsequent years found themselves similarly targeted by opportunists and predators. Financial advisors and legal experts often pointed to Shakespeare's case as an example of why winners must seek professional guidance and establish strict boundaries with those around them. But for every lesson his story taught, it also underscored the fragility of human relationships. The people closest to Shakespeare had, in many cases, exploited his generosity. It was a bitter reminder that trust, once broken, can have devastating consequences. Doris Dunnigan Moore's name remains synonymous with greed and betrayal. Her actions turned what should have been a story of triumph and generosity into one of despair and horror. True crime enthusiasts and criminologists continue to analyze her case, exploring what drives individuals to commit such calculated and heartless acts. Some view Moore as a textbook example of a narcissistic personality, while others see her as a product of a culture that prizes wealth above all else. As the years pass, the legacy of Abraham Shakespeare endures. His story is told not just as a cautionary tale but as a reminder of the dangers of misplaced trust and unchecked greed. For those who knew him, the pain of his loss remains fresh. But they also remember the man he was before the lottery, kind, humble, and generous to a fault. In their memories, Abraham Shakespeare is not just a victim but a symbol of the goodness that exists in even the most challenging circumstances. And for Doris Dunnigan Moore, the walls of her prison serve as a constant reminder of the life she stole and the dreams she shattered, all in the name of greed.